Tobey, hi, so nice to see you. So nice to meet you. Such an interesting story. I was doing my phone banking for my candidacy for state rep for East Lyme and Salem, and I got your number, and I'm doing my pitch. Then I'm on the board of ed, and I care about education, and I care about the environment. And then I just got endorsed by Sierra Club and Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, and you stopped me right there, and you're like, I care about that. So that's how we connected, really, basically. So you are the owner of Three Bells Marina, and I'm finding out that Three Bells Marina is more than a marina. It's an outfitter. It's what else? Tell me.
Well, it's a wide range of things, really. But first, let me just start by saying thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
I'm really pleased that you reached out to me. And it's a pleasure to talk not only about the marina, but about the things that we really care about. Three Bells Marina, our tagline is because life is better on the water, and we really mean that.
I believe that too. Life is better on the water. You get on the water and the ripples and the calm, and something just comes out of you that just feels so healing and healthy and good.
It does, and that's the big reason why we want to protect that environment. It's the biggest asset we have. The marina is on Smith Cove, just off the Niantic River, which then feeds into the Long Island Sound, and so it's a critical asset for us to obviously preserve, because without a healthy asset there, nobody would want to come visit us.
Right.
And that is our business at the end of the day, to put people on the water and give them the opportunity to enjoy the environment and the water by keeping a boat with us. And so we store over 300 boats in the summertime and give them access to the water, and just a few more than that during the wintertime. But we also, as you mentioned, are Three Bells Outfitters, which is a kayak rental as well as a stand-up paddleboard rental operation. And we really started that a few years ago for the express reason of giving greater public access, if you will, to people who want to get on the Long Island Sound or want to get on the Niantic River in a way that gets them close to the water. It's one thing to be on a powerboat where you're maybe inside and separated from that environment. But you get in a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard, you're right down there in it.
It's more of an experience. It's more a relationship, I think, when the water splashes up on you. You get a little bit of that on a powerboat, but not to the same extent. And putting your paddle in the water and really moving yourself through it is a different experience.
Exactly. And the kayaks are so quiet, it gives you opportunity to see wildlife. And I was just amazed, actually, that just a few weekends ago, I was actually on my sailboat sitting on a mooring in the Niantic River. I got up and had a cup of coffee the following morning, and I just saw some movement in the trees behind me, no more than 50 feet behind me. And I looked, and it was a bald eagle. And I've only seen a few bald eagles on the Niantic River, all of which have happened in the last 24 months. And that's a really good sign that things are healthy on the river. We've seen osprey there for a number of years, but I've never seen so many bald eagles as I've seen in the last 2 years. So
that's
it's
good
quite
news.
Impressive, yeah. Quite impressive to see.
And I heard for a while the osprey were diminished in capacity along Long Island Sound because of some of the mosquito and bug spraying that we were doing. Maybe it was the DTC or something, the insecticide, pesticides that were being sprayed for a while.
Yeah, and that could well be true, although I'm pleased to report that this year in particular, I've seen more osprey this year than I've ever seen. So that's quite pleasing, to see the number of birds. We get kingfisher as well, and you get blue herons, and so when you're in a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard and you get a chance to come upon something like that, on the river, it's quite a sight to see an osprey take a fish out of the river and then see the eagle steal it from him along the way. So the water's a very precious commodity to us. We're a certified clean marina in Connecticut, one of the first in Connecticut to achieve that distinction.
Tell me what that means, Tobey. I'm not really sure. So I love boats, I love the water, I love the environment, but some of the specifics you have to educate me on.
Yeah, well, the state of Connecticut established what they call the Clean Marina Program, and they set up a set of criteria for you to strive to comply with them. And then if you were able to achieve those criteria, you'd get a certification that you could hold out to the public. And I think we were one of the very first in Connecticut to achieve that distinction a number of years ago. The state gave us an award for that. And we're very pleased to fly the certified Clean Marina flag on our flagpole. But it basically means that we respect the environment, and the practices that we engage in are in keeping with the highest possible standards for environmental stewardship. And so we're quite proud of that, and it's a part of the education, not only for our own staff, but also for the customers that enjoy their time with us. And then more recently, in an effort to continue to sort of do right by the environment, we established solar panels on our valet rack building, which now provides sufficient electricity to cover all of the electricity needed by the marina, not only by the buildings that we operate, but also by all of the customers who draw power off of our docks.
That's phenomenal.
So yeah,
You're doing good stuff.
We're independent of fossil fuel, and quite pleased that we can cover all of our electric needs. So
lovely.
You know,
next thing I'm hoping people will start doing is having batteries hooked up to solar panels so that the power will come and get stored. And then in the case of a power outage, or in the case of winter months where there isn't as much sunshine, perhaps, or rainy days, that we could use that if we don't have the solar power to generate our devices in the house.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to strive for. Right now, our power goes directly into the grid, and we get an offset for the power that we contribute versus the power that we consume.
But we still have enormous fees that we pay, correct? That for the delivery of those services, we maybe are big consumers for that reason, but then we still have to pay for it to come to us. So that would be nice to straighten out a little bit.
Yeah, well, I wish you all the best of luck on that. I don't know a lot about that, but I do wish you all the best there. So Three Bells, its whole mission in life is really to give people access to the water and to provide them products and services that really facilitate, if you will, their enjoyment of the water. So we pride ourselves on knowing a lot about how to do that and how to do that effectively. But our customers ultimately are the judge of whether or not we do a good job. And in that sense, we just can't ignore, the Smith Cove, which is a very pristine cove connected to
beautiful. It's a phenomenal spot.
Niantic River. And one of the groups that we stay very close to is Save the River, Save the Hills.
And I was going to talk about that. Yeah, Save the Rivers. It's a wonderful group, and they are very active and have done some testimony up in Hartford on the environmental concerns. So tell me about that. What's your relationship with them?
Well, first, I think it's important to understand that the 1 mile stretch of this area, as I understand it, is the last undeveloped mile of salt water in Connecticut. And it's a very environmentally sensitive area that we hope never gets developed because its development would threaten the Niantic River in terms of its water quality and things like shellfish, swimming, and all the related activities, in that area. And Save the River, Save the Hills has done a very good job of trying to preserve and protect that critically important part of the river. We have annually what I believe to be one of the largest kayak fishing tournaments on the East Coast at Three Bells.
Oh, nice. When does that happen?
It happens in July.
Okay.
And the reason I mention it is because we, as part of the raffle that we do during that tournament, the money that we generate from that raffle, we donate to Save the River, Save the Hills. And last year we wrote them a check for a little over $5,500, I believe.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
From that raffle. And so, they do some amazing things, not only in terms of preserving and protecting the river, but they measure the water quality in the river, and they have been doing that for a long time. They provide a pump-out boat so that nobody is discharging into, the river. It's a free service that Fred Grimsey, I believe, started at Save the River, Save the Hills. And so they do an enormous service to the community by helping us, keep that as pristine as you see it today.
Absolutely, and it's so important. We just understand that, I think, more and more with the water quality and the scarcity of water, and wondering where our safe, clean drinking water will be. Because sometimes I think that the different levels, the manganese and things in our water are higher, at the very tip-top high end of what they should be, whereas you'd hope that maybe they'd be more towards the middle or down so that they weren't so high. And if you are immunocompromised, if you have a little bit of lead for kids, for adults who are on respirators, those kinds of things, it's really can be very damaging. So what you do is just so critically important. So I applaud you for that. Thank you. Being aware of that is so important. So what are some of the other things that you see, like cleanups do you see, and even like, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying something about fishing lines on the water. And when they walk along the boardwalk in Niantic, a lot of time they'll see what fishermen will leave. Is that something that you see periodically that's problematic?
Yeah, we don't see it so much at the marina, but we're very well aware of that issue, and we actually have bins, specialized bins that I believe they're provided by the state. I'm not absolutely positive of that, which are designed for used fishing line to be dispensed properly. Because you don't want to see that, in the water, allowing for the fouling of, in our cases, fouling of props or getting, into the fishing community. So it's an important thing. We have them in various stations along the marina so that when fishermen do come back, and we cater to a lot of recreational fishermen, they have a place to dispose of that and not, in the environment.
Okay, very nice. And I'm just wondering, since I am on the Board of Education, I have to ask, is there a relationship with the schools at all? Do you have any kind of program where there could be an internship or a mentor-mentee kind of programs?
Yeah, we don't have an official relationship with the schools, but maybe that's something you could help us with. What we do is hire a great number of summer help.
Nice.
So dock hands and also summer kids that facilitate the kayak and stand-up paddleboard rentals that we do. As you can imagine, we get a big influx of customers. We cater to over, 300 boats in the summertime, and we have a fuel dock. We have a galley there that provides breakfast and lunch to our customers and to outsiders. And all of those activities take high school and college kids for the most part in the summertime. So we often hire 15 to 20 kids that all cater to our customers in those different areas. And some of them end up staying with us for quite a long time. It's not atypical to have someone stay with us from high school right on through college. And some of them stay with us for even longer than that. It isn't that uncommon to convert someone into a yard hand in the marina and ultimately to something like a mechanic, a more skilled labor opportunity. So we have a very close relationship with the town in that regard.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we would welcome a more organized approach to it, perhaps.
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm just a real strong proponent because in East Lyme, 66% of our budget goes for our schools, and some people who are community members who don't have kids in the school anymore ask, why do we have to spend so much money? And I always am trying to build community relationships just in the idea that we could have some kind of community, business or mentorship program. There's so much that you can learn on the water, just water testing quality and the wildlife that you've already mentioned. I mean, I'm sure you could list a dozen other things that I could learn.
We do, for example, we do tours on the river, both in kayaks and stand-up paddleboards. Just to, you'd be amazed at how many people will rent a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard who've actually never been on the water before. So to take them out and give them an opportunity, to see it firsthand with someone who knows that region, oftentimes those are done by kids, basically, who we have trained and have become quite familiar with all of the aspects of that, and then make very good guides.
Nice.
And we do the same in terms of fishing. If somebody wants to go out on a guided fishing tour, to know where you're going to catch bass or where you're going to catch fluke or where you're going to catch bluefish or anything that you might be interested in, we'll take you out with someone who really knows what they're doing.
And they know the spots.
They know all the spots. Yeah, they don't like to tell you.
Of course not.
On an open forum like this, but yeah, they would take you out in a private lesson, if you will, and show you the ropes.
So how does that work? Do you go out in two kayaks, or do you do a double kayak, or what are the arrangements for something like that if someone was going to take you on a tour?
You can do it both ways, actually. We have tandem kayaks where you can go out in one unit or you can go out in separate units. Typically one of our guided tour fishermen has his own tricked out kayak with all the bells and whistles on it. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Hobie kayak, but they have a very patented, unique pedal system where there are fins underneath the kayak that drive it forward. And the big advantage to that is that your hands are free. So if you're fishing with a fishing rod, you're not also messing with a paddle. And so it's a very popular item for us. And as a result, Hobie has become really the market leader in kayak fishing because that system works so well. But if you're not into fishing, but you still want your hands free to take pictures, or if you're into wildlife, or in my case, just go out and have a cup of coffee early in the morning, it's a great way to go. And it really does make fishing fun at that level, because you're right next to the water, and yet you're hauling in a fish that's half the length of your cockpit that you're sitting in.
Wow, that's pretty amazing and pretty pristine too. Just the experience itself, I just think would be such a good Sunday morning activity.
Yeah. Well, so we welcome all to come down and check it out. We're actually right in the middle now of some renovations where we're actually opening up a public area for the kayak and stand-up paddleboard rentals, where after you come back, we'll have picnic tables and an ability to sit down and enjoy that environment overlooking the water that we didn't have before. We used to park cars there. And so we're always trying to do something to make it just a bit more accessible.
Nice. And you said you've been in this business for 14 years. Can I ask you, what did you do prior to this? How did you get started with the Marina life?
Yeah, certainly. I did something completely different. I spent 25 years in financial services in New York, but I grew up along the water as a kid up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I always had the water in my blood. I love boats, sailing perhaps a little bit more than powerboating, but I love boats. And so after a reasonably successful career in financial services, I was a little too young to retire, so I decided that what I really ought to do is buy a marina. And my thought at the time was that would help reduce my cost of boating. It didn't quite work out that way.
Well, at least it's a tax write-off, I would guess, because it's part of what you're doing. So
exactly. So, but it's what's really nice about it is you get to spend your days around people who are very happy in that environment, right? So it's an enjoyable physical environment, and you're around people who are taking their leisure time and spending it with you and having a great time doing it. So it's been a real joy. I can't believe it's been 14 years already.
It goes by fast, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
I was doing volunteer work for a while at Mystic Seaport, and I was in the interpretation services. And when people would come on the vessels, I would feel like I was on vacation because I was just welcoming them. Sometimes they come from California, Alaska, France, who knows where they were from, but it was their vacation. It was their happy day. And I would imagine that's some of what happens with your life and your work of what you're doing.
That's exactly right. I mean, people come down to the marina and take a big sigh of relief. It's one of the reasons we started music on Friday nights, was because we wanted to welcome them in a sense after everyone gets done with work, and we start music at 6 o'clock, typically goes till about 8 o'clock, and it's just a great way to kickstart the weekend. Everyone can get food in the galley, listen to a little bit of music, let their hair down a bit, and that's a great way to start a weekend.
And do you have a similar band and type of music every week, or something different, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively new for us. We started it last year. We actually started it on a Thursday night, only to realize that was probably the wrong night, and we weren't getting the response that we had hoped for, largely because people would come on Friday and then just spend the whole weekend. So we moved it to Friday this year, and for the first time, and we started doing pretty much every weekend, other than what we call our customer appreciation party, which is a little bit bigger event. And it could be anything from one person to we've got one father-daughter who performed a couple times this year.
Nice.
To bigger bands. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a potpourri of different things. And we're learning as we go as to what works and what works best. So
of course.
But it's been fun, and it's I don't think anybody has not enjoyed the Friday nights.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, like you said, let your hair down after a hard work week and just enjoy being on the water, listening to music, because you said it looks over the sound, right? Or on a Niantic River, so
yes,
you get to look over that, yeah.
Exactly.
And I didn't realize that it was salt water that you had that was the last mile, you said, of salt water. And that's part of the cove that stretches out to the Niantic River. I guess it goes that way, and then the sound comes along.
Yeah, that stretch of where the Save the Rivers, Save the Hills is focused on is we're in Smith Cove, which is inside of the Niantic River. But you come out our channel and you're then into the Niantic River, and if you take a right out of that channel, it's really that whole area would be on the left-hand side as you're going up the river. And as I understand it, is the last undeveloped mile of coastline in Connecticut.
Are people dying to develop that?
Well, I don't know all the details perhaps as well as I should, but I believe a significant percentage of that, a material percentage of that, is in private hands. And there's been various proposals to develop that with some fairly high density housing. And that's the greatest concern, because the biggest issue in the Niantic River is what's called non-point runoff. Non-source point runoff, where you can't really determine where the pollution is coming from, but it's generally coming from fertilizing your lawn, from septic systems that have overrun. And so the more development you see along the coastline there, the more probability you're going to have those pollutants enter the river. And one of the issues in the Niantic River is that it used to be, which is why East Lyme has that scallop shell on its town logo.
Everything, right.
It used to be, the place to get those beautiful scallops. It was a source of those scallops. And those scallops, I won't say they don't exist anymore in the Niantic River, but they don't exist like they used to. And there have been a number of efforts to try to bring those back into the river. We've been a part of that. We've helped seed the river with shellfish. But those scallops have never taken off or been able to regenerate like they have in the past. And the belief of that, as I understand it, is it has a lot to do with this pollution. It has a lot to do with the runoff that exists in the river. And so that's something we have to be very careful that we keep an eye on. I know they monitor that in the Niantic River very, very closely. But that development is an area where the hills are basically granite, so very hard rock, and that means that to the extent there is pollution on top, it doesn't have a chance to percolate down into the sand or the gravel. It goes right into the river. Yep. Whenever you have rain. And so when we get heavy rains, especially in the upper part of the river, there are concentrations of pollutants that we'd rather not see.
And the wind power was something that people were trying to develop recently, just the idea of garnering that support or energy source. And there was a problem with that, is what I understand, that the runoff from that caused some...
I don't know about the wind power, but it was solar power. Putting solar panels in watershed areas or where they're not really well thought through creates additional runoff that used to, absorb water, into the surrounding area and forested areas in particular. And so again, that's not my area of expertise, but I know that it's an important issue to save the river, save the hills, which means it's an important issue to us.
Of course it is, yeah. And I think everything we do, we're just really conscious of, is it good for the environment, is it not good for the environment? And I know that there's going to be a cleanup, or after the show is aired, it will have been the day before, to clean up the sound, save the sound. And I ride my bike. I like to bike every single day. So when I'm biking, I see trash spewing on both sides of the road, and it's just amazing or surprising to me that people can't be more respectful or careful. And it just comes back to the recycling issue and how do we save it, and the need to compost and reduce, reuse, recycle, and trying to do all of those things.
The only other thing I would mention about this, which as a business owner I feel in some ways compelled to mention, and that is that while environmental responsibility is a critically important thing, when regulators and politicians get involved in this area, they need to partner with business in order to develop effective solutions. Because all too often, what we see are regulations that are well-intended but just don't work.
And they don't make sense, and it's not the right solution. And it's all about communication. And this is your, what did I hear yesterday? Something like, the more you know you don't know kind of thing. Yeah. So I would just hand it to you and say, what should we do? What do you think is the right way to handle this?
I mean, most business owners that I know are very responsible, and obviously in our case, our biggest asset is actually the Niantic River and the Long Island Sound, and we want to protect that. But we're also in the best position to help determine how to protect that. And to work with people effectively on what are really good solutions. Because when you develop a regulation, and then it goes into sort of the enforcement side of that regulatory body, you'll get someone that'll come out to your business and they have no decision-making authority. They just have enforcement authority. And they look at what's written on the page and they try to apply something that was never intended for that particular circumstance. And it becomes a very difficult situation to deal with as a business owner. And so that dialogue that you're talking about is critically important to us. And, as a small business, while we are a significant employer, and small businesses around this country are major employers for people generally, we don't have the resources that a big company has. We don't have a compliance department. We don't have a legal department. We don't have an HR department.
You work hard and you work 24/7 probably.
So someone throws a group of environmental regulations at you that are many hundreds of pages long. I don't have a department to digest all that. And I don't have the resources to farm it out to consulting companies. So it's really important that regulators work closely with us in a partnership-like way.
I agree. I'm glad you said that to me, because definitely it's word for the wise. And you forewarned is forearmed. If you know, then you can jump in and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't ask questions, and if you think you know more than the people who are in the trenches, so to speak, or on the water, then you're not doing your job. And that's my kind of mantra. It's like, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to be your voice in Hartford. And if I'm your constituent, I want to be your strong voice, and I want to listen to what's important.
Well, we encourage everyone to vote for you in that regard, because that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are well-intended, but also are willing to partner with business owners. We're not the enemy. We're actually your friends, and we're here to do the right thing. But we want to do the right thing efficiently, economically, and responsibly. And to that end, we all win.
Right. Tobey, we just have maybe a minute or so left, and we've covered a lot of good ground. Or good water? Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to wrap up with?
I don't think so. I think you've covered all the ground. I mean, I'm very excited to be here, and I'm excited, obviously, to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about Three Bells, talk about East Lyme, talk about the river and the Long Island Sound. I'm so pleased to be able to enjoy all of that myself, and I think what's great is giving everybody else the opportunity to do so as well. We get customers that come from Rhode Island, from Massachusetts, from far away as Maine and New Jersey, keep their boats here and it's actually the principal reason that I came here and bought this particular marina is Niantic is right at the mouth of the Long Island Sound, and it's home to some of the best fishing, some of the best boating there is, in the eastern seaboard. And so for those of you who might be hearing about East Lyme for the first time, come and check it out, because it's a great place.
I think I want you on tourism. Join the Tourism Council. I think we're going to be wrapping up here in just a second or so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.